All right. Well, good morning, everybody. So nice to have everybody join us for our monthly guest meeting, which is somebody that we all know and glad to have with us is uh, Jud Eason. He's going to give us a nice presentation, and we'll do some Q&A at the end. So with that in mind, I'll turn it over to you, Jud.
Okay, I just came back from a vacation, short weekend, long weekend in Maine, and the hotel that we stayed at had a conveniently located juggling cage. Some people called it a tennis court. As people walked by the tennis court and watched me juggling inside the tennis court, they always ask the same question, which is, "How long have you been juggling?" And my answer is, "Oh, about 5 minutes." So this is going to explain how long I've been. Roger always has this funny thing at the beginning, so I have a funny thing about juggling. So here's a juggling guy. Maybe. Can you see this? I hope so.
Mr. O'Keefe's phone. 623.
Yeah, we can see it.
This weekend conducts those Google searches. 7:50 in the morning is when Mr. O'Keefe is.
Before I begin my act, I'd like to explain an old show business expression. They say a comic says funny things, but a comedian says things funny. This makes me a juggler. I have an unusual philosophy about the art of juggling. I don't think it's important how many. There are two ways to do juggling tricks, with applause and the way that we're doing them. Too late. Style. You want to be impressed. No, it's not a difficult trick. Tell from your reaction. Really good juggler could do this and even look away. Glancing around the room. But you could make it. Nice dress, sir. And now without breaking stride, the object is of course to bend. Watch as I place the third ball into the pattern. Making fancy tricks in case there are any jugglers in the crowd. You may wonder why I threw that ball over there. So am I. I'm only teasing. I can use all of these. If I get rid of all of these. I like to do a quick impression that I call juggling on a motorcycle. That was stupid. So far, it's what we like the best. And that's frightening. Sometimes it's not important how many in terms of quantity. Is it affected by gravity? Or does the earth suck? sorry I can't control my own sense of humor, but evidently you can. So. The bowling ball, which I will attempt to combine with an egg, natural enemy of a bowling ball. The third object. The trick is to eat the apple while juggling. First, a volunteer you, sir, please. Examine it quickly. I'd like you to throw it back to me. I'll tell you when. I didn't mention I'm going to eat this apple, did I? I hate to waste it for people juggling in India. Try it again. One more time. Wait. You missed throw it at exactly the right time because your throw is the first throw of the juggle, and I have the second throw. I hear the drummer. You must loft it high in the air so I can catch it and begin to juggle. I'm ready when you are.
I'll stop this somehow. Well, that was the comedy hour. You ready for the next thing?
We're ready.
Okay, the next thing is a very short, one of the best jugglers I've ever seen. And here it is. Hang on a second. Gotta share the screen again.
Jud here, who's they said it was going to be about juggling, but it was. They just
This is what I was working up to someday to be able to do this. This guy started juggling when he was about 8 years old, performing publicly. We won't watch the thing because it's kind of gets to you after a while, but eventually he does like 12 rings, which is just amazing. Okay, enough of that. Okay. We'll move on to the next thing, which is a very short, this guy is a juggler. Oh, by the way, there was a bunch of articles in Brain and Life magazine. I don't know if you subscribe to that, but there's a bunch of articles in there about how juggling increases your brain connections and is a good sport to try to do, to learn how. Anyway, this is a guy named Michael Motion who spent about a year in a cabin in the woods learning how to do this, and eventually got the what's it called, MacArthur Foundation Genius Award for doing this triangle trick. Again, we won't watch the whole thing, but We'll move right on to the hard parts because it's kind of long. We'll move on to my favorite part of this juggling trick. I was trying to learn how to do this. This is almost impossible to do if you try this. Keep it a ball bouncing like 2 inches off the ground. So we'll move on from that kind of long Michael motion. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is a pecha-kucha. Let me just explain what the pecha-kucha is. It's a storytelling style that was developed by Japanese architects who decided that they saw too many boring PowerPoint slide presentations. So they made a rule for the slides that they either made to show to other people or that other people were showing to them. They would only see presentations that were exactly 20 slides long, and each slide takes exactly 20 seconds to see. Move on to the next slide. So the whole thing can't be more than 6 minutes and some seconds. So I made one that, just kind of as a dare. So here's my pecha-kucha, which was made from things that I learned in PD Self. I don't know if you've seen PD Self. And I showed this to a group, but it was right at the beginning of the pandemic when I was a better juggler, and but it's not in front of an audience, it's a homemade thing. So here I am in the juggling. Can you hear that?
No, I can't hear it, Judd.
Um, okay, we're going to skip the pecha-kucha because you can't hear it. I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe it's,
You want me to try it on my side?
no, that's okay. We'll skip it.
Okay.
We're going to move right on to this one. This is some of the art that I made. I know last time I was on here, people were asking about the art that I made and how I did it and what I did. So I'm just going to show you a few of the things that I made. You know, I look at this and I'm thinking to myself, all these pictures are so old. I don't even remember. Most of them I've given away to people, and I'm not sure who I gave them away to. So last but not least, after that, I'm working on another pecha-kucha, which is a 6 minutes, 20 slides and 20 seconds each, except I'm not really finished with it, but you're my practice audience. So here it is. You ready? 6 minutes. Here it is.
Ready?
We can just do a slideshow. So, oh wait, before I do the slideshow, we have to stop the slideshow, sorry. I have to do a slideshow with presentation notes so that I can see what I'm supposed to be saying about it. So, I wrote this down. So the name of this presentation is This Must Mean Something. Or I don't know if you've seen the movie, um, the Roy Neary played Richard Dreyfuss, and he was a witness to an unidentified flying object, and even has a sunburn from its bright lights to prove it. Roy feels compelled to make sculptures of a mountain using mashed potatoes as an artistic medium. And during this, he says, "This must mean something," as he adds detail to the sculpture. In 1975, I took my first computer programming course, and for a course that was the project I had for the course was to write a Fortran program using punch cards to write the program. In the class, we had to write a program as a project, and it's interesting that my program involved simulating branching phylogenetic trees. This must mean something, because I later spent a long career in information technology, and the closest artistic pursuit I had was making flowcharts with boxes and arrows. So I made this Fortran program that it didn't look as nice as this, but this is the idea that each branch of the tree had some probability of branching or dying. And that was my project for class. 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And as you all know, it's a progressive disorder of the nervous system, and produces the part of the brain that produces dopamine slowly ceases functioning. And my symptoms started slowly, included barely noticeable tremor on one side and stiffness. My wife, Nancy, noticed that and said to me, "Why are you walking like a robot?" Which forced me to go to a neurologist and get diagnosed with Parkinson's. Parkinson's symptoms worsen over time. I've been lucky that mine have been kind of slow. It's 12 years ago I was diagnosed. Although Parkinson's disease can't be cured, at least not yet, medicines and exercise have significantly improved my symptoms. I was having sleep problems with my Parkinson's, and Parkinson's can mess with your natural sleep-wake cycle. Some people with Parkinson's experience a sudden increase in artistic creativity and desire after taking dopamine kind of medicine. And the art spark phenomenon has been observed since the 2000s. And on a 2012 survey, they found that up to 20% of Parkinson's patients experience an increased desire to create things artistically. I started making what I call Jud art, mostly at night when I should have been sleeping. And all I knew about was black India ink, and I didn't discover colored ink for some time. I discovered I could make lines and combs easily. So this is what I call a comb. I don't know if you can see my arrow, but these broken lines. So what I do to make this is I put a drop of India ink on the paper and blow with my mouth, not a straw, to make believe I'm kind of like blowing a ladybug off the paper. I make my art by placing a drop of ink on the paper, blowing it, and making lines and ink explosions. I don't use a straw. I purse my lips and blow like I'm playing a flute, or blow like I'm pretending that the ink is a ladybug that needs to be blown off the paper. I made what looked like a Jud art tree. After making the tree, my wife took a picture of an actual tree that looked amazingly similar to the one that I had made. I'd made a portrait of a subject that was not known to me until after making the portrait of it. This must mean something. At first, art that I made followed rules I made, and I had to use black ink, and I had to use no brushes, just blowing the ink. But later, I added colored ink and alcohol ink and brush pens, which are kind of like Chinese brush stroke pens, to make art like this. I was wondering why my tree looked so much like the trees that were in nature, and I looked for reasons and I found that the branching patterns of trees follow certain physical and mathematical rules, and I think the ink blown on my paper follows similar rules. Leonardo da Vinci observed that when a tree trunk divides, the cross-sectional area of the branches adds up to the cross-sectional area of the trunk. And when the branches divide, the sum of all the areas of those areas also equal the trunk, and so forth. So if you take all the branches at the top of the tree and put them together, it makes about the same area as the trunk as at the bottom of the trunk. I then saw an article about Santiago Cajal, who was a Spanish neuroscientist and a pathologist and histologist who specialized in neuroanatomy. And he got the Nobel Prize for medicine in 1906. He shared it with Golgi. I don't know if you've heard of the Golgi bodies in the cell. I don't know what they do anymore, but I learned that in 8th grade. But they actually had different thoughts about how the brain worked. Santiago Ramon thought that the brain was made of cells that somehow transmitted information from one to the other, and Golgi had a different idea about it. He was born in 1852, and as a child, his behavior was declared poor and rebellious, an extreme example of, at the age of 11, he was imprisoned for destroying his neighbor's yard gate with a homemade cannon. He was a keen painter, artist, and gymnast, but his father didn't encourage those abilities. Oops. Hang on. His father didn't encourage those abilities. And I think that's all you need to know about. Oh, in his lifetime, he was married, and with his wife, he had 7 daughters and 5 sons, and still had time to get the Nobel Prize out of this. And this is me imitating some of his work. He looked through a microscope and drew what he saw, and his drawings are just amazing in the detail and clarity that they have. My art looked a lot like what his art looked like, and that must mean something. A lot of things that you see in nature are made out of repeating simple processes over and over again. The tops of each of the leaves of this fern looks like the entire fern. And the same thing, if you look at the branches of trees, the top branches look sort of like little trees growing out of the top. And it's easier to make rules for how things should grow if the rules are really simple and you just do what you did, except on a smaller scale. And these patterns form all over the place, just in river deltas, in conch shells, and in fractals, which is kind of a mathematical thing. In lung alveoli, the picture on the top right is ice breaking, and the bottom is lightning strikes that also have the sort of similar. One of my paintings, and one thing I noticed about this one is that the picture on the right is actually an upside down copy of the one on the top row right of the array of paintings. And even I don't know which way they are, which way is up and which way is down. I guess I decide differently at different points in my life. I don't know. And I expanded it to these are the tools that I use for art. Acrylic ink, alcohol ink, which makes little circles if you drop it on paper, and brush pens, which are kind of like watercolor inside of a pen with a brush top. And this is just another little animation of how one is made, kind of beginning to end. You put a drop on the paper, and you blow it until it explodes into little, what I call brushes. And that's the idea. And the one on the left, I think, was my experiment to see if I could make 2 that were almost the same. So this is actually 3 different paintings that are almost the same, but not quite. And these are some things that you see in nature that have spiral patterns. Chambered nautilus on the top, and different kinds of plants. And these are things that I learned in mathematics or computer science about trees that are used in doing searches of data. And so that's also a mathematical idea. The idea of a binary search tree is if you're looking for 7, for example, I start at the top and I say, if it's less than 8, is 7 less than 8? Yes, it is. So go to the left and then compare it with the 3. Is 3 less than 7? No. I mean, yes, it is. So go down to the 6 and finally you find the 7. And these are some recent ones that I made. The one on the right, I called something like detained when I read about people being detained at the border and having their kids taken from them. kind of got to me. And this is my last, it must mean something. The top picture is a petroglyph that is a rock carving that is hundreds or thousands of years old. And on the right, on the left, I'm sorry, is the Milky Way galaxy, which is also a spiral. So spirals must mean something to everything, to everyone. That's the end of my Pechakucha and the end of my story. So I will stop sharing.